Yogananda frequently said that he was William the Conqueror. This I found impossible to understand. I had been brought up in the English system. In the English system, William the Conqueror is one of the great villains of history. And here I found he was my own guru. I had to do a lot of thinking and a lot of research. And finally I gave Catherine Kairavi the job of researching his life. And it had come to me during my studies with him that I was his son, Henry, and that too had come to me. And I thought, Catherine, please spend some years now researching his life and finding out the parallels between William and Yogananda, between Henry and Kriyananda. Find out if they exist. Find out what you can. Because it seemed to me that if Master had said that he was William the Conqueror, he must have said so for a reason. And that reason had to be an important reason for his mission. And so that book, which will come out very soon, in fact it should have come out today, but it will come out tomorrow. So a little bit late, but you can order pre-copies. You can order 100 copies up to now. But I would say that it's an extremely well-written book and full of fascinating insights into truth and into spiritual truth. So I would like Catherine to come up here and say a few words about this book.
Helps to see graphically what we're talking about, and this is the book. And in fact, you may not be aware, Swamiji, but the entire shipment of the book arrived 4 days early. And so rather than having just 100 copies for pre-sale, we have many more than that available at the tables at the back of the room. Swamiji asked me to speak just very, very briefly tonight about, besides his own request that I look more deeply into the lives of Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda as Henry I, to look for those parallels. And it's been a project of 11 years of research, and every moment of it has been deeply inspiring for reasons that I'd like to share with you. First of all, as Swamiji himself said, I have been a disciple of Yogananda now for 32 years, and I have been a disciple perhaps for 5 years when I heard the fact that Paramahansa Yogananda had made the statement that he was William the Conqueror. Now, I did my undergraduate and graduate work in English literature, so I wasn't an expert on English history, nor certainly on the specific actions and character of William the Conqueror, but I don't think there's one person here who imagines that it was the life of gentle, reclusive, charitable, soft action, but rather this was a warrior to his core. And I, like Swami Kriyananda, struggled with how to reconcile the fact that a great avatar, a Prem avatar, an avatar of love in this lifetime could have had a God-ordained mission. Because he said that long ago, as Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, which Swamiji's mentioned several times this evening, he was Arjuna in that lifetime, already liberated. No compulsion to reincarnate, free of desire, of likes and dislikes. He came motiveless. He came only for the upliftment of mankind. How do you reconcile that with the life of a man who, we have to say, was in charge of the many battles that resulted in spectacular bloodshed? How was this possible? But as Swami Kriyananda said, it's also very clear that Yogananda, like all of us I know who've read Autobiography of a Yogi, there may have been miracles that we had to put on the back burner. I myself did. I couldn't accept every single word the first time I read the book, but I only had to look at the cover, and I did frequently. I'd close it and look at it, and I knew that every word was truth, and my own consciousness needed to expand to understand that truth. And so if he said he was William the Conqueror, then I needed to understand that. And it was a fascinating question for my mind to contemplate. And then Swami Kriyananda, in his own very low-key way, without any flash, mentioned in several satsangs, several gatherings, that he felt that he had been Henry I. And in fact, he said that it was shortly after the passing, the Mahasamadhi of Yogananda, that in a very deep meditation, it came to him that he had been the conqueror's youngest son, Henry I, who became King of England in 1100 and ruled for 35 years. He is the least known, most underrated, and least publicized King of England ever. So at first the research was frustrating. There was almost nothing. And then near the end of the 1990s, Dr. C. Warren Hollister, a great medieval historian of UC Santa Barbara, came out with the very first full autobiography of Henry I. And I saw it in a bookstore. I grabbed it. I FedExed a copy to Swamiji. I think both of us sat and read it nonstop. And for me, Swami Kriyananda leapt off of every page. And Swamiji himself has told me of his own experience in reading it. There's one incident where he has been called to help rescue the capital city of Normandy, his father's dukedom, and chaos is about to break loose. His brother, who should have been in charge of the battle, in a moment of cowardice, escaped across the river, which left de facto Henry, Swami Kriyananda, in charge of what was going to prove to be one of the ugliest, bloodiest, and most pivotal battles of Henry's lifetime and in the history of Normandy. And Swami Kriyananda wrote me that as he read that section of that moment when Henry realized that his older brother had fled across the river to safety, he was in charge, he emerged from the ducal fortress to face bloody hand-to-hand fighting in the streets of Rouen. He said he could smell the smells, he could hear the sounds, he could feel the panic and the horror, and his own heart, as he read that section, began to pound. Another section has to do with when his older brother was killed precipitously in a hunting accident, very frequent in those times, shot through the heart, instantly dead. And as all of us know, in an absolute monarchy, the loss of the monarch means absolute anarchy. And it was Henry's duty, his deepest responsibility in that moment, to move quickly to seize the treasury and do what he had to do to stabilize the Kingdom of England. And he was challenged when he got to the treasury, and a very muddy-headed knight challenged his right to take over his father, William the Conqueror's kingdom, in that moment, when in fact he was his heir, the rightful heir in that moment. And Swami Kriyananda again wrote me that in that moment of pulling his sword and threatening and in the deepest sense of righteousness, asking the treasurer to reconsider, please, your decision, his heart again was pounding and responding. And he said it wasn't a matter of being a third person in that setting and seeing things as if Henry might have seen them, but rather he felt himself to be in Henry's body, seeing through Henry's eyes, looking at it with Henry's consciousness and his own sense of urgency. As I moved on with the book, I asked Swami Kriyananda, well, there are so many parallels between your life and those of Henry, and I won't go into all of them. There are, in fact, we outlined more than 65 that you'll find in the book, all the way from an incredible physical likeness that we have from the chroniclers who lived during Henry's lifetime, all the way down to the subtlest aspects of character. And these are very, very specific and compelling similarities, parallels. And the same is true between the life, even physically again, of William the Conqueror and Paramahansa Yogananda. But beyond that, I realized how many penetrating questions there were connected with this book, because we found, and Master himself said in his lifetime, that those disciples who were close to him in this lifetime were with him then. In most cases as children, as very close key warriors, counselors, advisors. Who were they in this lifetime? So there's a lot of very interesting tidbits in this book that have to do with things that the Master himself revealed. But what's most important are the key parallels have to do with the fact that William the Conqueror came, he was born with God-ordained mission in a pivotal era when the world was just emerging from the Dark Ages, and it was heading into what's known as the 12th century Renaissance, or what Sir Kenneth Clark called the Great Law. And the world was just beginning to build again monumentally in stone the learning that had been lost in the Dark Ages from the classical worlds of Greece and Rome was being rediscovered and understood and applied again. Mathematics, philosophy, geometry, astronomy, all of these things were being rediscovered. But what was needed was a reestablishment of law. Rather than battle, rather than bloodshed, rather than thuggery, law and putting the king himself and his aristocracy, making themselves subject to law. And this was the great achievement both of William and of Henry. But William's lifetime was too short to accomplish the vast mission that he had. And you have to consider too, it took place in England, an island somewhat isolated from the mainland. There was a chance there to create a sense of, it's not too much of a stretch to say, community. And it had a chance there, and in fact, Henry I's great accomplishment was the gift to England of 33 years of unbroken peace. This was absolutely unthinkable even 50, 60 years earlier. So these two great men established in that lifetime, first of all, an environment that for that time period gave individuals the greatest possible opportunity to make spiritual progress. And that is precisely what Paramahansa Yogananda and his heir, Swami Kriyananda, have done in this lifetime. Master talked incessantly about founding world brotherhood communities, and all of his teachings, regardless of where we live, are about creating schools, environments, relationships that give us the best environment to make rapid soul progress. And this, I realized, was the core opportunity. I can't give too much credit, it's impossible, to Swamiji for all of his help in writing this book. We've joked with each other frequently about how many authors have the opportunity, especially in writing about someone who lived 900 plus years ago, how many authors have the chance to consult with that historical character. And from time to time I'd ask him, Swamiji, was this Henry's motivation at this moment? And I got a clear answer. And I understood William the Conqueror because he was Yogananda, because of Swamiji's deep attunement with him. Most of all, the book was thrilling to me to write because I realized that all of us have a chance to, in the choices that we make, hook our own destinies to those of great masters, their heirs, great spiritual families, or rivers of consciousness. And they're before us in forms that we often don't recognize, that all of us have an opportunity as we make these choices. With whom, with what river of consciousness am I going to connect my life? And it's in that we find our own nobility. And as Donald Walsh said, and of course, as we've heard so inspiringly from Swamiji himself tonight, the goal of life is seeking God, is finding union in Him. And that's the thread that runs through the 2 souls and 4 lives, as we've chosen to name this book. Thank you very much. I'll close with that.